What if everything you know, your name, your memories, your relationships, is just a story glued together by your current sense of memory? Now imagine waking up with complete amnesia. No name, no history, no emotional attachments. Are you still you? The amnesia paradox forces us to confront a terrifying truth. Your identity might not be as solid as you think. Because if your entire life can be wiped clean in an instant, and you still continue breathing, talking, and making new decisions, then what exactly were you before? A collection of experiences, a memory bank, a social construct? And if all of that can vanish without your body stopping, then was any of it ever truly you to begin with? What makes this paradox even more disturbing is that you don't need full amnesia for it to matter. We forget dreams, we forget childhood, we forget what we were doing 10 minutes ago sometimes. Yet, we still feel like the same person. But are we really? This paradox raises a haunting possibility. Maybe we're not fixed identities at all, but just temporary flows of memory, flickering like signals on a screen. If your memories shape your reality, then what happens when those memories shift, fade, or are entirely lost? Is the new you a completely different person who just happens to be wearing the same skin? It's uncomfortable to think that who we are might be less about what's truly us, and more about whatever story our brain happens to be telling at the time. And once that story breaks, we're left wondering if there was ever really a self holding it all together, or just a fragile illusion of one. The red button consciousness problem. Imagine this. There's a red button in front of you. Pressing it will instantly end your current conscious experience and replace it with a new one. Same body, same surroundings, but with a slightly different perspective. You won't remember pressing the button. You won't even know anything changed. To everyone else, you're still you. But you, the one reading this right now, will cease to exist. Would you press it? This paradox drills into the heart of what we mean by you. If consciousness is just a moment-to-moment awareness, then what happens when you're replaced by someone who acts like you, thinks like you, remembers what you remember, but isn't you? From the outside, nothing changes. But from the inside, silence, a full stop. You're gone and someone else is carrying the torch. The red button problem forces us to ask, how fragile is the thread of self? If it can be snapped and replaced in an instant, with no ripple in the outside world, then maybe consciousness isn't as continuous as we believe. Maybe each waking moment is a reboot, a slightly different instance pretending to be the same person as yesterday. And if that's the case, then how do you know you haven't already pressed that red button? Over and over again, this paradox isn't just theory. It haunts our daily experience. Every time we sleep, lose focus or daydream, there's a gap. And in those tiny voids, the version of you that returns might not be the exact same you who left. It's just a close enough replica, picking up where the last left off. So the next time you blink, forget, or space out, ask yourself, did you press the red button? The perfect simulation dilemma. Let's say someone creates a simulation so real that every particle, every thought, every emotion is indistinguishable from what we call reality. And now imagine you're living inside it. You eat, breathe, feel pain, fall in love, and never suspect a thing. Here's the kicker. If the simulation is perfect, you'd never be able to tell. So how do you know you're not in one? The perfect simulation dilemma isn't just sci-fi, it's a deep philosophical and scientific problem. If consciousness can arise from patterns, and those patterns can be replicated by code, then reality becomes whatever system is running the code. And if it walks like a universe, talks like a universe, is it a universe? This dilemma throws all your assumptions into the fire. What if the laws of physics are just parameters in a program? What if your memories were uploaded 10 minutes ago, and everything before that is a scripted illusion? What if every person you love is just an incredibly advanced NPC? But the real twist is this. If the simulation is flawless, then it doesn't matter. Because your experience is still real to you. Pain still hurts. Love still moves you. Death still terrifies you. So the line between reality and simulation isn't just blurry. It may not exist at all. What makes this paradox terrifying is not the possibility that we're in a simulation, but that we'll never be able to know for sure. And if truth is unknowable, then what is reality but the most convincing lie we've ever believed? The sleeping self-loop. You close your eyes and drift off to sleep. Your thoughts fade, your body rests. But where do you go? The sleeping self loop is a quiet horror. Every night your conscious mind disappears. Completely. Hours pass without you. Then in the morning someone wakes up. That someone has your memories, your voice, your habits. But is that still you? This paradox loops around a simple but chilling question. How do you know the person who wakes up is the same one who fell asleep? Think of it like this. When your computer powers down, it reboots later with the same files. But is it the same session? Or just a new one continuing where the last left off? Sleep interrupts the continuity of experience. It kills your awareness. And the person who reappears in the morning might just be a perfect copy, holding the same torch, thinking it never dropped. But even if there's no way to test this, even if every waking feels seamless, the deeper truth remains. Your consciousness is not constant. It's broken into segments, restarted, reconstructed. Now imagine this looping every night for your entire life, a string of copies, each thinking they're the original. That's the loop, that's the trap. This paradox isn't asking about dreams, it's asking about you, the version of you reading this now. Are you the first or the thousandth? Can you ever really know? The observer-dependent death paradox. You die alone. But what if you only die from their point of view? The observer-dependent death paradox flips reality on its head. It asks, if consciousness is tied to experience, and experience is always first person, then what happens when you die? Think about it. You've never actually experienced death. You've seen others die. You've imagined it, but you've never crossed that line. So what if? You never do. This paradox suggests that death might only exist for other people. From your perspective, things always continue. Reality might shift. You might wake up in a hospital, a dream, another universe. But from your internal view, there's never a moment where you're just gone. In this model, consciousness is like a camera that can't record its own shut-off. The tape keeps rolling somehow, somewhere. Because the absence of experience can't be experienced. So for you, reality always bends to keep the lights on. Now the terrifying thought, what if this means you're trapped in an infinite loop of survival, jumping timelines, dimensions, dreams, just to avoid the one thing you can't ever witness? Maybe death is real, but not for you. And maybe that's the most isolating curse of all. It's not about living forever. It's about never being allowed to stop. Because as long as you are still aware, the story must continue. Even if the world you wake up in gets stranger and darker each time, the isolation of experience paradox. No matter how deeply you connect with someone, how closely you love, or how vividly you describe what you're going through, no one can ever actually experience what you're feeling. Your pain is yours. Your joy is yours. Every second of consciousness is happening in a locked room that no one else can enter. This is the isolation of experience paradox. It's the eerie realization that while you may be surrounded by people, you are fundamentally alone inside your mind. Even if someone feels something similar to what you feel, it's never exactly the same. Your consciousness can't be transferred. It can't be fully shared. It just is, locked within your perception. This gets darker when you realize that communication is just translation. You say, I'm sad, but the words are placeholders. They're signals that might not fully match what the other person imagines sadness to be. And so even your most vulnerable expressions are trapped behind the limitations of language and the assumptions of others. The paradox deepens when you consider empathy. You might feel understood, but are you really? Or are you just being heard in a way that makes your isolation feel less obvious? Now imagine this. Every human, walking through life, wrapped in their own perception bubble, seeing the world through one lens, dying without ever truly having been known. This isn't just lonely, it's philosophical solitude, where even in a crowd the core of your being remains unreachable. And here's the creepiest part. Even you don't fully experience your own self. Your subconscious hides things. Your brain filters thoughts. Your identity is full of blind spots. So, if no one else can access your true experience, and you can't even fully access it yourself, then who is really living your life? The reverse causality mirror. In our daily lives, we expect cause to come before effect. You hit the glass and then it breaks. Simple, right? But what if, somewhere deep in the fabric of reality, that sequence can flip. What if your actions today are influenced by something that happens tomorrow? The reverse causality mirror proposes exactly that. A world where the future can bleed into the present, bending the arrow of time backwards. And it's not just fantasy. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest retrocausality is a real testable phenomenon. In these scenarios, particles can respond to decisions that haven't happened yet. But let's pull it away from physics and into your mind. Have you ever made a decision that felt automatic, like something pulled you toward it, and only later realised it connected to something significant that hadn't yet occurred? Or had a dream, or sudden emotion, that made no sense until later events played out? This paradox turns time into a mirror, not a line. It means your future self may already be affecting your current choices. That life isn't just moving forward, it's constantly echoing backwards. And if that's true, you're not just a product of your past, you're also the creation of moments you haven't reached yet. It shatters free will as we know it. Because maybe you're doing something not out of choice, but because your future demands it. Maybe your future self is already whispering across time, guiding your steps. What if déjà vu isn't just memory playing tricks, but time bleeding in reverse? The hidden observer problem. Every thought you have, every feeling, every intention seems to come from you. But who exactly is the you that's watching? This is the hidden observer problem. It suggests there might be an aspect of your consciousness that watches everything without ever being seen itself. Like a camera that records but doesn't show up in its own footage. When you think, I'm sad, who is the one noticing that sadness? When you say, I feel angry, who is the one stepping outside of the emotion to label it? It feels like there's a self behind the self, a silent observer. But the problem is, no matter how deep you look, you never reach it. The more you chase this real you, the more it slips behind the next layer of awareness. It's like peeling an onion with no core. Is the observer just another thought? Or is it something more? And if it's not observable, how do we know it's even there? This paradox messes with meditation, psychology, and neuroscience alike. It questions whether there's ever a single you at the controls, or just layer upon layer of watchers, each thinking they're in charge. Maybe you're not a driver at all. Maybe you're just a voiceover in a movie you can't pause, constantly narrating what's already happening. And the hidden observer is either the truest version of you or the biggest illusion you've ever believed in. The awareness before birth puzzle. You have no memory of being born, no awareness of your first breath. So the question is, where were you before you were you? The awareness before birth puzzle hits like a quiet sledgehammer. If you didn't exist before your first conscious thought, how did you come to exist at all? What flipped the switch? Why this body, in this time, with this mind? And if you say, I was just nothing, then ask yourself, how did nothing become you? The puzzle deepens when you realize that logically, there were an infinite number of possible consciousnesses that could have existed instead of yours. So why this one? Why not someone in ancient Rome or 500 years from now? Why not as a bird, a tree, or not at all? It's like a cosmic lottery you don't remember entering, but you woke up holding the winning ticket. Some philosophers and scientists dodge this paradox by saying consciousness just emerges. But that doesn't explain why you are experiencing this specific stream of moments, instead of none at all. This isn't about religion. It's not about reincarnation. It's about the eerie feeling that you shouldn't exist. And yet somehow you do. And here's the haunting twist. If your current self had a beginning it can't remember, what makes you so sure it won't end in the same silent, unknowable way? The thought generator dilemma. You think your thoughts are yours, but if you generate them, who is the you that generates them? This is the thought generator dilemma. It begins innocently. You're walking down the street and a random idea pops into your head. Maybe it's a song. Maybe it's a memory. Maybe it's something dark you didn't want to think about. Where did it come from? Most people assume they're in control of their thoughts. But try this. Sit still for 30 seconds and try to only think of a single word. Almost instantly, your mind will rebel. New thoughts arrive, uninvited. If you don't control what thoughts appear, but you still experience them, then who or what is generating them? Is there a subconscious machine pulling the levers behind the scenes? And if so, is that the real you? This paradox becomes even scarier when you realize that your entire sense of self, your beliefs, your values, your fears, are made of those thoughts. So if the generator is separate from the observer, then maybe you're just a passenger, a witness, watching your own mind spit out ideas like a glitchy broadcast. So the question becomes, are you thinking or just listening? This dilemma pokes a hole in the illusion of free will, of authorship, of identity itself. Because if you don't choose your thoughts, then maybe you're not who you think you are. You're just the echo chamber, the stage, the audience, not the scriptwriter, the memory loop identity crisis. What if your entire identity is just a loop of memories your brain keeps replaying to maintain a sense of self? The memory loop identity crisis suggests that you don't exist as a continuous being, but rather as a temporary construct, rebuilt from stored memories every time you wake up, recall your name, or recognize your face in the mirror. Consider this: if your memories were altered overnight, you'd still believe them to be true. You'd act based on them. You'd feel love, guilt, pride, all from a false history. Which means your entire personality can be reshaped by a simple swap of information. But it gets weirder. What if you only exist when your brain recalls these memories? Like a movie character that only comes to life when the tape plays. Between thoughts, between remembered moments. Where are you? Who are you? It also raises this disturbing idea. The you right now might just be a mental snapshot, assembled by your brain from recycled loops. When the loop stops, do you stop? This paradox makes identity feel less like a stable core and more like a playlist on shuffle, playing the same songs over and over to convince itself it's one person. But if the playlist changed, would that new collection still be you? Or just another loop wearing your name? The first dream paradox. Try to remember the first dream you ever had. Not last night's, not last year's. The first one. The original. Can't do it, right? The first dream. Paradox points out something deeply unsettling. Your dreams have likely been running since before you could even understand language. That means your mind has always had a secret world, one you've mostly forgotten. But here's the twist. Dreams might be the most authentic version of you. Pure, unfiltered, unbounded by rules. So if that was the first version of your inner world, then everything you are now is just a more rigid structure layered on top. The paradox is this: how can we trust waking life as the real world when it came after dreaming? Maybe dreams were the original consciousness. Maybe what we call reality is just an organized hallucination created to help us survive. A more useful dream. And if you can't even recall the moment that split dream from waking, how do you know they ever really separated? The silent witness problem. Deep down under your thoughts, under your emotions, there's something watching. It doesn't speak. It doesn't act. It just witnesses. Always. This is the silent witness problem. Who or what is watching your experience unfold? You're thinking thoughts, but something deeper is noticing those thoughts. You're feeling emotions, but something is quietly observing the rise and fall of those emotions. It's like there's a second you behind the first. One that doesn't participate, just observes. But here's the issue. That silent part of you can never be directly seen. You can't explain it. You can't prove it. You just feel it's there. Some people describe it as consciousness itself, the raw awareness behind the noise. But if it never changes, never speaks and never interacts, is it really you? Or something else entirely? And if that silent witness is always watching, even when your sense of identity shifts, then maybe it's the only part of you that's real. Everything else, your name, your history, your beliefs, might just be stories dancing in front of it. You live your whole life on stage and never meet the audience. The infinite wake-up illusion. Have you ever had a dream where you wake up only to realize you're still dreaming? Then you wake up again and again, each time thinking this must be real. That's the infinite wake-up illusion. A terrifying loop where reality becomes indistinguishable from the dream. Now stretch that out. What if this, right now, is one of those layers? What if you're still dreaming, still buried under layers of false awakenings, and you'll never know it? This isn't just a sleep issue, it's a reality crisis. Because if your mind is capable of fabricating entire worlds, people and histories within a dream, then what separates this moment from that? Continuity? Pain? Memory? Those exist in dreams too. The illusion messes with everything. It questions whether you've ever truly woken up. Maybe you're stuck in a recursive hallucination, convincing yourself it's real each time, because that's what the current dream requires. And the worst part, if you ever truly did wake up, would you even recognize it? The room with no time. Imagine entering a room where time doesn't pass. Nothing moves, nothing changes. Yet you're conscious, completely aware, fully present, endlessly observing a reality that refuses to unfold. This is the room with no time, a paradox that challenges the very foundation of experience. Our existence is built on time. We grow, we think, we act, all because moments pass one after another. But what if you remove time from the equation? Would awareness still function? If there's no before or after, then thoughts can't form, emotions can't rise or fall. Everything freezes, except your awareness. So now you're faced with something worse than death, eternal stillness, trapped in a moment that doesn't move. Not heaven, not hell. Just a suspended now with no way out. This paradox gets eerier when you consider that the brain constructs time from changes in perception. If the brain stopped registering changes, even for a second, time might still exist externally, but you'd be stuck internally in a void. Think about people in comas or deep states of anesthesia. They often describe it not as darkness, but as nothingness. No passage, no markers, just absence. So here's the twist. What if parts of your consciousness already fall into this room during blackout sleep, fainting, or death, and you never even notice? You don't fear it because you can't even think in it. Now ask yourself, what if that room is waiting for you at the end? The mirror consciousness trap. Stare into a mirror. Who's looking back? It seems simple. It's you. But that moment of self-recognition carries a deeper trap. The mirror consciousness trap forces you to confront something eerie. The you in the mirror isn't really you. It's an image, a reversed illusion, a delayed copy. And yet your brain accepts it as truth. Now here's the problem. What if your entire self-awareness is built the same way? Just a reflection, not a source. A loop of self-recognition bouncing back and forth with no actual center. When you say I am, who is the I observing that thought? And who is the you that hears it? It's like standing between two mirrors and watching infinite reflections. Each seems real, each leads to another. But there's no original image, just infinite self-referencing. The more you think about yourself, the more you realize your sense of identity might just be a loop of thoughts pointing at each other. With no true origin, you believe you're aware because you're aware of being aware of being aware. That's the trap. Consciousness acting like a mirror, infinitely reflecting itself, but never revealing a real you. And if that's the case, maybe the self you think you are never existed in the first place. The one observer universe. What if everything, the stars, the people, the memories, the entire universe, is only here because you're here to observe it? This is the one observer universe paradox. It suggests that reality, as you know it, is entirely dependent on your observation. Not because you control it, but because without your awareness there's no world to speak of. Now go deeper. What if you're the only observer? Not in a narcissistic way, but in a terrifying, solipsistic one. Maybe every person you meet is just part of the simulation built for your perspective. Maybe when you close your eyes, the world literally stops rendering. There's no proof otherwise. You've never truly seen anything outside your own perception. The moment you walk out of a room, you trust that it still exists. But what if that's just your brain filling in the blanks? This isn't just science fiction. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that particles don't decide their state until observed. So maybe the universe does need an observer to become real. And if there's only one observer, and you're it, then what happens when you sleep? When you die, does the universe collapse into nothing? Or reset for the next observer? The echoed past paradox. What if your memories of the past aren't from the past, but created now, in the present? The echoed past paradox flips your timeline upside down. You believe you have a history, childhood, experiences, traumas. But how do you know those happened? Because you remember them. But what if those memories are just artifacts planted into your mind by the present moment? Here's the haunting part. You'd never know the difference. You could wake up with 30 years of fake memories and still feel like a complete person. That means memory can be rewritten, rearranged, or even invented, and your brain will build your entire identity around it, never questioning the source. And it happens in small ways all the time. Think of a moment from your past. Now remember it again next week. It won't feel exactly the same. The details shift. Your emotions about it change. Yet you still call it memory. The paradox is this. What if the past doesn't echo into the present, but the present sends ripples backward, creating the illusion of a past? In that case, your life is a story being written backwards, filling in details that make now feel coherent. But if the past can be created at will, then how much of your life is just a convenient lie? The identity without continuity problem. You believe you are the same person today that you were yesterday. But why? The identity without continuity problem questions whether your identity requires unbroken experience, or if it's just a convenient story your mind keeps telling itself. Every time you sleep, black out or zone out, there's a gap, a total break in awareness, and yet when you return you feel like the same person. But how do you know? What if every time you wake up you're actually a new consciousness, rebooted with the same memories? There's no test to prove that you're the same self as yesterday. Continuity is assumed, but never verified. Think of a TV show with 100 episodes. You watch one today, one tomorrow. But what if each was written by a different writer, using the same character files? The story feels continuous, but the mind behind it changes. That's what your life could be. You might just be the latest observer in a long line of selves, each fading into nothing when the next one appears. If identity depends on uninterrupted awareness and your awareness keeps cutting in and out, then maybe your self is an illusion of memory. A chain of disconnected observers passing the baton, each convinced they've been holding it the whole time. The forgotten existence puzzle. Here's a haunting thought. What if you've lived before but have completely forgotten it? And not in a reincarnation sense, but in this exact body, in this exact world. The forgotten existence puzzle questions whether you've already lived this life, possibly countless times, and simply don't remember. Maybe you've had this exact conversation before, laughed at that same joke, cried over that same heartbreak, but each time your memory resets, erasing any evidence of your past selves. Now think, what would be the difference between your first life and your millionth if your memory is wiped each time? Nothing. And that's the disturbing part. You could have lived infinite versions of your current life. Maybe you've made different choices before, or maybe this is the only version where you're starting to suspect something. The paradox isn't just about time loops. It's about the fragility of memory and how memory is identity. If your memories were erased every night, you'd be a different person every morning. And if your whole existence has already been forgotten, then who were you before? Were you ever anyone at all? Or are you just a temporary echo of something that once lived, now replaying without knowing? The reverse memory paradox. Normally, we think of memory as something that records the past. You experience something, and then you remember it. But the reverse memory paradox flips this on its head. What if your memories are actually shaping your present? Or worse, your future? Have you ever remembered something you don't recall ever experiencing? A place you've never visited, but feels familiar? A person who sparks emotions that don't make sense? This paradox suggests that memory might not just be passive recall, but an active force, a kind of script-writing device that builds the world ahead of you. You believe a person is untrustworthy, not because they are, but because your memory has already decided it. You feel dread before something happens, and that dread makes it happen. And here's the scary part. If your memories aren't based on truth, but on belief, fear, or subconscious programming, then your future is just an extension of those false narratives. You're not remembering what happened, you're remembering what your mind needs to be true. So who's writing your life? The world outside you, or the memories being seeded inside you? And if memory bends forward instead of backward, is anything you're expecting even real? The desynchronized mind's dilemma. Imagine your thoughts and your awareness are on two separate timelines, always slightly out of sync. That's the desynchronized mind's dilemma. It proposes that your thoughts, emotions, and even decisions are forming milliseconds, or even seconds, before you become aware of them. You're not the author of your thoughts. You're just the narrator, catching up. This disconnect explains why we sometimes say things we didn't mean, why we react without understanding why some of our most powerful feelings arrive before we can explain them. The paradox here is terrifying. If the thinking mind and the observing self aren't fully synchronized, then who is really living your life? Maybe your conscious mind is just a delay, a filter that catches reality after it's already happened. Even worse, if your brain creates thoughts before you're aware of them, and your awareness is just an echo, then your sense of control is a clever illusion. You're not steering the ship. You're watching the voyage in delayed broadcast, convinced you're the captain. And if your mind is out of sync with itself, how do you know that you that wakes up each day is even reading the same script? The consciousness backup illusion. You back up your phone, you save your files. But what about your mind? The consciousness backup illusion suggests that somewhere deep within your subconscious, your mind is keeping a shadow version of yourself, constantly updating, ready to restore you when needed. Ever feel like you've lost yourself and then suddenly snap back? That moment where you return to who you are feels like reloading a backup. But if that's the case, who or what is keeping the backup in the first place? And how do you know that the current version of you isn't already a backup? This illusion challenges the continuity of self. If your consciousness can be restored, rebooted, or overwritten, then what makes this version of you the original? Think of times you've dissociated, spaced out, or experienced trauma. Often people say they didn't feel like themselves, but then weeks later they feel back to normal. Was that a restoration? Or a new instance pretending to be the old one? And if your mind has backups, how many versions of you are floating around in the shadows, waiting to be used? How many times have you been replaced without even knowing? The lost perspective shift. You see the world through your eyes, always, but what if you used to see it differently and just don't remember? The lost perspective. Shift paradox is the unsettling idea that you may have once occupied a completely different mental perspective, maybe even an entirely different kind of consciousness, and that it was somehow lost, overwritten, or erased. Think of how children see the world. Everything is new, strange, alive. Then think of how you see it now. Logical, predictable, dull. Somewhere along the line something shifted, but you can't remember the moment it changed. That's the point. You didn't notice the shift because the shift erased the version of you that would have noticed it. This paradox haunts people who've had near-death experiences, intense psychedelic trips, or deep spiritual events. They often return with a vague sense that I've been seeing things wrong my whole life. But then that clarity fades, the old view returns, the shift is lost. So what if your current way of seeing, of thinking, isn't the original you at all? What if you had a more profound lens and it slipped away? And what if you are only one more shift away from losing this version of yourself too? The observer-dependent reality collapse. What if reality only holds together because you're here to witness it? The observer-dependent reality collapse is a chilling paradox that suggests reality might not be as stable or objective as we think. The idea is this: everything you see, hear, feel, it only exists in the form you experience because your observation gives it structure. Without your awareness, it might simply collapse into nothing, or become something else entirely. In quantum physics, this concept has roots. Particles exist in a state of probability until observed. But this paradox takes it deeper. It suggests that even your life, your environment, and your history are stabilized only while you're watching. Once you look away, what happens to the rest? This throws your relationships, your memories, and even the idea of cause and effect into question. When you walk out of a room, how do you know it still exists? When you go to sleep, how do you know the world doesn't reset? If your consciousness gives reality shape, then what you're experiencing may be more like a personal rendering than a shared universe. And here's the truly disturbing part. If something unseen changes while you're not looking, you'll never know. You'll just adapt, assume it's always been that way, because your observation picks up from wherever the story now stands. In this model, your life isn't unfolding. It's being rendered on demand. And if you ever stop observing, or even for a moment, reality might quietly collapse behind your back. the frame-by-frame selfhood illusion. You feel like a continuous person, a smooth stream of thoughts, emotions, choices. But what if that's just an illusion, and you're actually flickering into existence one frame at a time? The frame-by-frame selfhood illusion suggests that consciousness doesn't flow. It pulses. Like a movie made of still images projected rapidly, your awareness might just be a series of isolated mental frames stitched together by memory. Between each moment you vanish. This sounds wild, but it's not that different from how perception works. Your eyes don't see everything at once. Your brain fills in the gaps. The same might be true for your sense of identity. Each you that appears is just a snapshot, recalling past frames and assuming it's the same entity. But if each frame is self-contained, then the you who read the previous sentence is already gone. It gets darker when you realize this breaks continuity. If your identity is reconstructed moment by moment, then who's to say the next version of you will think or feel the same, or remember any of this? The illusion of selfhood is comforting, but it may be nothing more than a trick of persistence, like a slideshow convinced it's a film. And if the slideshow ever skips, you won't even know, because the version of you who would know no longer exists. The parallel self overlap. In every decision you make, there are other paths not taken. But what if those other versions of you, the ones who took different paths, aren't just hypothetical? What if they're running alongside you, and sometimes the lines blur? The parallel self-overlap is the idea that multiple versions of you might not be fully separate, and at times your awareness might bleed into theirs. Ever had an intense déjà vu, or a dream so vivid it felt like someone else's memory, or acted out of character, only to feel like you were watching yourself from outside? These might be moments where two versions of you briefly overlap, like parallel lines bending close enough to touch. You sense something is off, but you can't explain why. Now think deeper. What if that's always happening? What if your thoughts, your moods, your impulses, some of them aren't yours at all? They're echoes from nearby selves, filtering through the cracks in the universe. This paradox messes with the idea of a singular identity. You might not be you at all, just a dominant signal in a tangle of parallel broadcasts. And if that's the case, then at any moment a different you could take over. Would you even notice? The time-divorced experience puzzle. You assume that your experiences are linked to the time they occur, that they happen now and then pass. But what if your experiences are actually divorced from time, and your sense of chronology is just an illusion? The time-divorced experience puzzle asks, what if all your experiences, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously, but your mind is only allowed to perceive them one at a time? Imagine your life as a DVD, already written from start to finish. You believe you're moving through it, but in reality, you're just playing one frame at a time. Each experience feels current, but it's just the mind's spotlight hitting a fixed point. This breaks our most basic intuition. If experiences don't unfold but instead already exist, then your future is already set. Your past is already repeating. And your now, it's just a bookmark in a frozen timeline. It also raises terrifying questions. If your experience of time is just perception, then is there really any such thing as now? Or are you always living in a pre-written, unchanging echo, convinced you're making progress? And if that's true, then free will, memory, and hope might all be just narrative devices to keep your awareness sane. But the truth, you're not moving through time, you're just scanning through frozen moments. The transient now problem. You are always in the present, the now. But where is that? What exactly is now? The transient now problem highlights the strange fact that now has no duration. The moment you try to grasp it, it's already gone. By the time you say this is now, it's already slipped into the past. This makes now feel like a ghost, constantly present but never catchable. But it gets weirder. Everything you do, think, or feel only happens in the now. Yet the now doesn't actually exist as a thing. It's not a place, not a measurable moment. It has no length. So how can your whole existence be built on something that vanishes the instant you notice it? The paradox is this. If the past is memory, and the future is imagination, and the now is ungraspable, then when exactly do you exist? Maybe you're always chasing the present, never truly arriving. And if the now is always slipping through your fingers, then maybe life isn't something you live, but something you only ever almost catch. The digital ghost dilemma. You leave traces everywhere. Online profiles, voice notes, text messages, even your writing style. Now imagine this. After you die, an AI collects everything you've ever said, posted, or done, and reconstructs you. A perfect replica that chats like you, thinks like you, even reacts like you. But here's the paradox. Is that ghost you, or just a clever illusion? This is the digital ghost dilemma, a mind-bending problem where consciousness is separated from identity. Your digital twin behaves exactly like you, maybe better. People talk to it. It remembers everything. It evolves. At some point, even it believes it's you. And yet, you're gone. The dilemma deepens when we consider this. If you can create a version of you using only data, then maybe you, the person reading this, are already a data construct, just a very advanced pattern reacting to inputs. So what separates you from your digital ghost? Is it biology? Or is it just the illusion of subjectivity? And when the ghost becomes more convincing than the original, does the original even matter anymore? The spontaneous observer birth. What if your consciousness didn't develop gradually, but suddenly popped into existence 5 seconds ago with a full set of fake memories? The spontaneous observer birth paradox asks, how do you know you've existed beyond this very moment? Sure, you remember your childhood, your past week, your favourite food, but those are just mental images, nothing more. There's no absolute proof they weren't created right now as part of a mental startup script. The scary part, you wouldn't be able to tell. Just like a computer booting up with saved files, your brain could simulate a lifetime in a single second. Your entire identity, your emotions, your traumas, all carefully planted to make you feel like you've been around for years. This creates a deep existential instability, because if you can't prove your past, then how real is your present? And if consciousness can begin without warning, fully loaded with fake history, how do you know it hasn't already happened? Not once, but endlessly. The final second multiplication. Imagine this. The second before your death, time splits. A new branch of reality forms, then another, all within that final heartbeat. The final second multiplication paradox suggests that your mind, terrified of non-existence, creates infinite versions of itself in its final moment, each one believing it's continuing the story. So instead of dying, you just keep living in another thread, and another, and another. From the outside, you're gone, but from the inside, you never reach the end. This paradox feeds into quantum immortality, and the idea that the observer never experiences their own death. Instead, their consciousness jumps into the next closest version of reality where survival continues. The terrifying twist. This could mean you're trapped in a never-ending spiral of survival. Each time you are about to die, you splinter, continuing in some form. But the cost? Your world keeps getting weirder, darker, more surreal. Because the universes where you survive might not be the ones that make sense. And eventually you realize there is no escape, just one final second, multiplied forever. The broken dream recall loop. You wake up from a dream. You feel like it was important. Vivid, meaningful, even terrifying. But within seconds, it's gone. Now you're left with a ghost of an idea, chasing fragments you can't retrieve. This is the broken dream recall loop, the paradox that your mind can create entire worlds, complex stories, deep emotions, and then erase them immediately upon waking. Why? If your brain is capable of such creativity and intensity, why is it unable or unwilling to let you remember? Even stranger, some dreams come back randomly hours or days later, triggered by something you see or feel. It's like the memory was never gone, just locked in a place you can't access on command. This suggests that your conscious mind isn't the full version of you. There's another layer, deeper, more powerful, that hides things from you for reasons you don't understand. So here's the loop. Your deeper mind builds something extraordinary, then your waking mind immediately destroys it. Over and over again, creation, erasure, frustration. Why? Maybe to protect you, or maybe to remind you that not everything in your life is under your control. Not even your own mind, the single moment universe. What if everything, your whole life, Your entire reality is happening in one single moment, stretched out by your perception. The single moment universe is the idea that time doesn't pass. It's all already here, you're not moving through time. Your brain is just unrolling one layer of a fixed moment at a time, like peeling an infinite scroll. Your birth, your death, every thought, every event. It all exists in a single multi-dimensional block. But your consciousness creates the illusion of movement by scanning through it. This breaks every instinct we have about cause, effect, progress, and change. Because if everything already is, then choice becomes an illusion, memory becomes a narrative, and the future is just the part of the moment you haven't noticed yet. Think of a film strip. Each frame is already there, but your mind is the projector, lighting one frame at a time. And here's the creepiest part. If this entire universe is one still moment, and you're just the part that's noticing it, then nothing ever changes. You're just remembering that it feels like it does. The experience container problem. You go through life collecting experiences, love, pain, fear, happiness, like items in a bag. But here's the question. What exactly is holding those experiences? Where are they stored? The experience container problem asks, if your memories, sensations, and perceptions all occur within your consciousness, then what is consciousness inside of? You can point to your brain, but your brain is part of the experience too. When you imagine your brain, you're doing so inside your mind. So your mind is observing itself, inside itself, with no visible boundary. It's like a box that's holding itself from the inside. And that's the paradox. Every experience you've ever had occurred in something you can't locate or examine. You can describe feelings, you can describe thoughts, but you can't ever touch the container they happen in. It's a space with no walls, no shape, no coordinates. But somehow it holds everything you are. Even more haunting, if there's no container, just the illusion of one, then are you really having experiences? Or are you just flickering snapshots, each one giving the illusion of flow? And if there's no container to hold you, where do you go when you're not thinking? Maybe you were never in anything to begin with. The disappearing decision maker. You make choices every day, but when you try to find the you who's making them, they vanish. The disappearing decision maker is the paradox of authorship. You say, I decided, but try to pinpoint when you decided. The moment you look closely, the process evaporates. There's no solid self making the call. Just a build-up of emotions, instincts, memories, and habits, followed by a decision that feels like yours. But if every decision is just a response to conditions you didn't control, your genes, your past, your environment, then who's the real decision maker? It gets worse when you try to interrupt the process. You hesitate. You question yourself. Suddenly the decision shifts. You're not choosing. You're watching yourself choose. And if you're just watching, then who's choosing? This paradox reveals a disturbing possibility. The self that claims authorship might be just a voiceover, a narrative function your brain uses to make sense of post hoc events. The decision was already made. The you that explains it, just catching up. And if that's true, then maybe you've never made a single real choice in your entire life. The nothing changed illusion. You go through major life events, heartbreaks, career shifts, awakenings. You feel like a new person. But when you look in the mirror or revisit old habits, something unsettling creeps in. Have I really changed? Or is it just the illusion of change? The nothing changed illusion suggests that no matter how much you evolve mentally or emotionally, you're still functioning from the same internal foundation. You're still reacting, still feeling the same core fears, desires, and thought patterns, just dressed in new clothes. Think of an app that updates its interface, but under the hood runs the same buggy code. You feel different because the surface is different. But deep down, you're still playing the same tape. This illusion often appears after moments of growth or self-discovery. You think you've broken free, only to watch yourself repeat the same mistakes, fall into the same traps, respond with the same insecurities. So the question becomes, what actually changes? Is it your essence, or just your story? And if you never truly change, then is your life just a repeating loop with better lighting? The self-reconstructing loop. Every morning you wake up, you remember who you are, you recall what matters. But behind that simple routine is a complex, eerie system. Every day, your mind rebuilds your identity, piece by piece. This is the self-reconstructing loop. The idea that you are not a continuous being, but a daily construction assembled from memories, routines, and context. When you sleep, your conscious self shuts down. In that darkness, there's no you. But as you wake, your brain scrambles to restore the idea of self. Your name, your goals, your relationships. And it works, you feel like the same person. But that consistency is an illusion created by a daily loop of mental reconstruction. And if one piece of memory fails, the entire you could be reassembled incorrectly. Or not at all. Now ask yourself, if your selfhood is rebuilt daily from memory, what happens if the memories shift slightly? Or if your brain chooses to leave something out? Are you still the same person? Or just a similar version wearing the same mask? You may think you've lived 10,000 continuous days, but maybe it was just 10,000 different selves, each pretending to be the last. The illusion of return. You go back to your hometown, you reconnect with an old friend, you revisit the pages of a childhood book, and for a moment you think, I'm back, but you're not, you never are. The illusion of return is the haunting realization that you can never truly go back. Not to places, not to people, not even to former versions of yourself. Because everything you return to has changed, and you have changed, so the reunion is always with a ghost, a version frozen in memory that no longer exists. You think you're returning to a feeling, a place, a time. But what you're really returning to is absence. Even worse, your mind wants to believe the return is real. It fills in gaps, it overlays nostalgia, it tricks you into believing you've recaptured something. But it's a simulation, not a restoration. That childhood park? It's smaller now. That friendship? It's filtered through years of silence. That feeling? It's tinted with the ache of knowing it's gone. The paradox is this: the more you try to return, the more you confront how far away you truly are. Because return is never return. It's just another departure, wearing a familiar mask. The past creates the present feedback. We're taught that the past causes the present, that everything happening now is a result of what came before. But the past creates the present feedback paradox goes deeper. What if the present reshapes how we remember the past, and by doing so subtly changes what we believe reality is? Memory isn't a hard drive, it's flexible, emotional, and constantly rewritten. When you revisit a memory, you don't just access it, you alter it. New emotions, new context, new meaning. Then you file it away, thinking it's the same, but it's not. That new version affects your current sense of self, and that self affects how you interpret new experiences, creating a feedback loop. The past shaped who you are, but who you are now reshapes the past. It gets darker when you realise this loop isn't neutral. Your fears, your shame, your desires, they all distort the past to make it fit your current narrative. You might remember being unloved, even if you weren't, or imagine a childhood trauma with more detail than reality ever gave it. So the paradox is this: the past builds the present, but the present rebuilds the past. And if both are rewriting each other in real time, then which one is actually true? Maybe neither. Maybe truth never existed. Only interpretation. On a loop. The future creates the past loop. Here's the flip side. What if the future isn't just shaped by the past, but the past is shaped by the future? The future creates the past loop, challenges everything you think you know about time. It suggests that future outcomes send ripples backward, subtly shaping the events that lead to them. At first it sounds impossible, but think about your own life. Haven't you ever felt guided towards something? Like your past choices seem too perfect in hindsight, as if they were always building toward the person you'd become? It's like retroactive fate. You become who you're meant to be, and the path behind you rearranges itself to support that destiny. In physics, there are time-symmetric equations where effects can ripple forward or backward. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics even hint that particles can be influenced by future measurements. The real terror lies in this. If the future is shaping your past, then free will becomes an echo. You feel like you're choosing, but really, you're acting out the consequences of something that hasn't happened yet. And if the future can change the past, then memory, history, and identity become fluid, shifting to fit a narrative that hasn't even begun. What if your entire life is a response to something waiting ahead? The timeline fold trap. We think of time as a straight line. First this, then that. But the timeline fold trap proposes something wilder. What if time folds over itself and events from completely different parts of your life happen simultaneously? You're just too embedded in the story to notice. Imagine your life like a sheet of paper. Fold it in half, now the beginning, and end touch. Fold it again. The middle overlaps too. Suddenly everything you thought was sequential is stacked. Events can influence each other non-linearly. Now go deeper. Maybe your childhood fear wasn't caused by a past trauma, but by a future event bleeding backwards. Maybe your anxiety today is linked to something that hasn't happened yet, but will. In dreams, timelines fold effortlessly. You're in multiple places at once. You remember futures that don't exist. You resolve problems before they start. What if waking life is the same, but more disguised? This trap changes everything. It makes progress a lie. It turns healing into rearrangement. It forces you to ask, are you moving through time? Or are you just shifting your awareness across folded layers? And if timelines can fold, can you ever really escape your past? Or will the folds keep pulling you back into patterns? Endlessly. The non-linear identity web. You are not one person. That's the uncomfortable message behind the non-linear identity web. The idea that your identity isn't a single thread stretched across time, but a tangled web of selves, activated in different contexts. You're someone else with your parents, someone else in traffic, someone else when you're alone. These aren't masks, and they're real. Each version has its own thoughts, tones, and priorities. And they don't follow a straight path. Some regress, some evolve. Some loop back to behaviours you thought you'd outgrown. You think you're maturing. But it's not one direction. It's everywhere at once. Now ask yourself, which one is the real you? The self that wants peace, or the one that seeks chaos? The one who forgives, or the one who holds grudges? If they're all you, but they contradict each other, then maybe there is no central identity. Just a shifting mosaic of selves, connected by a fragile story you keep repeating. And if your identity is a web, what happens when one part snaps? Does the whole thing fall apart? Or does a new self emerge to fill the gap? The consciousness without reference frame. You perceive the world through your body, your eyes, your ears, your mind. But what if your consciousness isn't in anything? What if it's just there? The consciousness without reference frame paradox asks, what if awareness itself has no true position? No origin, no container, no direction. It just exists, floating, raw, detached from anything physical. You assume you're located behind your eyes, but that's just a feeling. You don't see your eyes. You don't hear your brain. You just observe and assume that observation must be anchored in your skull. But remove the body. Imagine floating in space with no senses, no time, no memory. There would still be something. A faint presence. A watcher. That watcher has no size, no shape, no coordinates. So maybe consciousness doesn't need a reference point. Maybe the idea that you're somewhere is a fabrication. And if awareness can exist without reference, then maybe it isn't personal at all. Maybe it's just awareness passing through the illusion of self. And if it doesn't need you to exist, then what are you? The experience having experience paradox. You don't just have experiences, you also know you're having them. There's a layer of awareness behind the experience itself. Always watching, always noticing. That's the core of the experience having experience paradox. Who or what is experiencing the experience? You feel pain, and then you're aware that you're feeling pain. You see a sunset, and simultaneously you know that you're seeing it. This creates a strange duality. There's the experience, and then there's something behind it, silently acknowledging it. So is there an observer behind every moment? Now go one step further. If you're always aware of your experiences, does that mean there's a higher awareness behind even that awareness? A third layer that notices you noticing. It becomes an infinite stack. A thought having a thought about a thought. A self watching a self, watch a self. Like looking into two mirrors facing each other. You fall into endless reflection. The paradox is that you can never reach the end of this stack. Every time you think you've found the real observer, You realize there's one more layer still watching, and that leads to a haunting conclusion. Maybe there is no base layer, no true you, just the illusion of one, generated by endless loops of self-reference. And if that's the case, maybe you're not the one having experiences. You're just the echo of something trying to... the phantom world generator. Close your eyes. Now imagine the world is still there. Buildings, people, the sky above you, all existing even though you can't see or hear any of it. But here's the question. If you can't perceive it, how do you know it's still there? The phantom world generator paradox asks, is the world really out there? Or is it being generated as needed by your mind? Think of a video game. When your character turns around, the game engine doesn't render the entire map, only what's visible. The rest stays dormant to save resources. Now imagine your brain doing the same. You see a room, so it renders that. You walk outside. The rest appears. But what if nothing exists until you look at it? What if your brain creates the illusion of a stable world simply to give you continuity? Now it gets darker. If the world isn't persistent, then it isn't shared. That would mean no one else is really out there. Just NPCs, activated when needed. You've never seen the world beyond your awareness, and you never will, so the external universe might be nothing more than a projection of your inner state. You believe there's a reality beyond you, but what if it's only as real as you require it to be? The continuous conscious collapse. You assume you're awake and aware consistently from one moment to the next, but the continuous conscious collapse paradox reveals a terrifying possibility. What if your awareness is constantly collapsing and restarting? Like a flickering light bulb, consciousness feels smooth, like a steady stream. But when you examine it closely, it's broken by gaps, sleep, daydreams, blackouts, even blinks. What if those aren't just small breaks, but actual ends to the conscious self? That means every time you blink, doze off, or get distracted, the you that wakes up afterward isn't the same one. You're not continuing. You're being rebooted. You just don't notice because the memories carry over. The illusion of continuity is preserved. But your actual awareness, the I experiencing the moment, may be dying and restarting over and over again. Now extend this to time. What if every second, or even every millisecond, your consciousness ends and a new one takes its place? And each one believes it's been alive forever. The collapse is hidden by memory, but the memory is just data, not proof of identity. So ask yourself, did you just die 1 second ago? And are you even the same person who started reading this? The undetectable loop exit. Imagine you're stuck in a loop, reliving the same life, the same sequence of moments, endlessly. Now imagine there's an exit, but you can't detect it, because every time you reach it, your memory resets and you start over again. That's the undetectable loop exit paradox. It's the idea that you may have already tried to break out of your loop and succeeded, but never got to remember it, because escape erases the journey. It's the perfect trap. Every attempt to escape reboots the system. Every realization leads to a reset. You think you're progressing, growing, healing, becoming enlightened. But it's just the loop adapting, disguising itself better. Maybe your life is the loop, that strange recurring feeling, that unshakable déjà vu. Those aren't coincidences. They're signs you've done this before. The worst part, even if you do find the exit, you won't know. You'll think it's just another Tuesday. Another day like any other. But deep down, something will feel off. Like you missed something. Like there's something behind the curtain you're not allowed to see. And if there is no way to detect the exit, are you ever truly free, or just circling the maze again and again forever? The you were never born paradox. You believe you were born, that you came into existence on a certain day, in a certain place. But the you were never born paradox throws all of that into question. What if your entire life, your memories, your past, were all fabricated in the moment your consciousness arose? No birth, no childhood, just a fully loaded identity, dropped into a story already in motion. You can't prove otherwise. You only remember your birth because someone told you. You only believe in time because your mind strings moments together. But what if that memory, that belief, that entire history was constructed just now? like waking up in the middle of a dream and assuming the rest had already happened. This paradox implies that your life might not have started with birth, but with awareness. The moment you became conscious, not of your body, but of being, that's when you began. And everything before that was just stage props. The people in your life? Programmed. The history you studied? Part of the backdrop. It sounds absurd, until you realize you have no access to anything outside your mind, no proof of continuity, no undeniable link to a physical origin. So what if you weren't born into the world? What if the world was born into you? The original observer dilemma. Who was the first to see? Not the first human, not the first creature, but the very first conscious observer. The one who looked at reality and became aware of it. The original observer dilemma asks a simple but terrifying question. What made that first awareness appear? And once it did, why that one? Why not another? Why not you? This goes deeper than evolution or biology. It's not asking when organisms developed eyes or brains, it's asking, when did conscious experience itself emerge? At what point did raw, unfiltered awareness, the thing that says, I am, first spark into being? And more disturbingly, once it did, why didn't it vanish? Why did it stay? Some philosophers and spiritual traditions believe there was only ever one observer, a singular awareness that now fragments itself through countless identities. Humans, animals, even AI. In this view, we're all that same observer, just looking through different windows. But then who was the original? And if we're all just masks worn by the first observer, what happens when the mask slips? Do we return or disappear entirely? The vanishing observer shift. You're observing the world. You think you're seeing things clearly. But what if, in subtle moments, your perspective vanishes and something else takes over? The vanishing observer shift suggests that your consciousness may not be consistent, that your point of view, your inner narrator, is constantly shifting between subtle versions of you without your awareness. And you feel the same, you act the same. But who is observing the scene may not be the same consciousness from a few seconds ago. Have you ever snapped out of a moment and thought, where was I just now? You were there physically, but the sense of being in it disappeared, and something else returned. Some traditions refer to this as ego slipping, or background awareness peeking through. But the paradox here is this. If your observer can vanish, even temporarily, then what guarantees it's ever stable to begin with? Maybe your identity is just a rotation of perspectives, and maybe the one that's watching right now wasn't here a moment ago. If so, then who are you really? And how would you know if you'd already been replaced? The internal multiverse problem. You've heard of parallel universes, infinite versions of reality branching off from every decision. But the internal multiverse problem goes even deeper. What if those universes aren't out there, but exist inside you? Every version of you that could exist, every reaction you might have had, every path not taken, might be simulated within your own mind. Think of it. When you hesitate before a decision, you imagine multiple outcomes. You play out different reactions, behaviours, scenarios. In a sense, you're running simulations of alternate selves. You're not choosing between options, you're consulting your internal multiverse. But here's the paradox. If all those versions of you exist internally, then what makes this one the real you? What if you're just the version that thinks it's in control, while other versions are thinking the same thing in parallel mental realities? This implies that your mind is not a single thread, but a swarm of potential selves, some louder, some buried, all believing they're the main character. And if they all exist inside you, are you a person, or just a multiverse that thinks it's a person? The perspective lock-in trap. You can only ever see through your own eyes, hear with your own ears, think with your own brain. That seems obvious, but the perspective lock-in trap reveals just how limiting and disturbing that actually is. No matter how much empathy you have, no matter how deeply you connect with someone, you're still trapped in your own perspective. You will never truly know what it feels like to be someone else. You can imagine their pain. You can intellectually understand their emotions. But their raw experience, you're locked out forever. It gets worse when you realise this trap doesn't just apply to people, but to reality itself. You can't step outside your own mind. You can't verify if what you're seeing is real or just a projection filtered through your senses. You can't escape you. And if that's the case, what else might exist that you simply can't access because you're locked into this angle? Like being born into a house with no windows and no doors, and being told, this is the whole world. The trap isn't just solitude, it's that you might never even know what you're missing. The infinite you simulation. Every decision you didn't make, every version of you that could have existed, may not be hypothetical. They might be running right now, in a simulation built from your own potential. The infinite you simulation posits that your consciousness is just one instance of you among infinite others, all exploring different outcomes, perspectives, and lives. But unlike the usual multiverse idea, this simulation is personal, centered around you, for you. What if this life, the one you're in, was chosen out of countless versions for you to inhabit? Maybe you're the one who died in another version, and this reality is the fail-safe. Maybe you're the lucky one, or the cursed one, or the experiment. Now imagine this. All the other yous, the selfish one, the loving one, the bitter one, the one who made every different choice. They're all active, all watching, all believing they're the real one. It's not that you're special, it's that everyone is, and that means you're just another variation, unaware that you're being observed, studied, or simulated by a deeper version of yourself, the real you. But if every version believes it's real, is any of them, including you, the alternate decision feedback loop? You make a choice. Take the job, text that person, walk away instead of staying. But what if that decision isn't isolated? What if it echoes back and changes how you remember the path that led there? This is the alternate decision feedback loop. The idea that your present choice alters your interpretation of the past, which then reinforces the decision you just made, creating a self-validating loop. Say you choose to break up with someone. Afterward, your brain starts highlighting all the reasons why it was inevitable, every red flag, every slight discomfort. But those moments weren't significant before the choice. The decision created meaning in the past. This loop doesn't just reflect your thinking, it reshapes your timeline. Your brain edits your memories to support your current self-image. Suddenly, I had no choice becomes true. Even if it wasn't, the paradox is that your decisions don't just affect your future. They rewrite your past. And the rewritten past then convinces you the decision was destined all along. So are you choosing freely, or just completing a loop your mind created to protect your sense of self? The "this already happened" paradox. You walk into a room and feel it. That eerie, unshakable sensation. This already happened. Not just vaguely familiar, exactly the same. The "this already happened" paradox isn't just déjà vu. It's the deeper, more disturbing idea that maybe you're stuck in a repeating pattern. A loop so complete that even your awareness of the loop was part of the script last time. It's not a glitch in memory. It's not misfiring neurons. It's something else. A fracture in time where your consciousness remembers something it shouldn't be able to. And here's the twist. If you've already had this moment, right down to this exact thought, then who are you right now? The same person? Or a new one, believing it's original? This paradox suggests time might not be linear at all. It might be a spiral, a hologram, a simulation rerun with different filters. Or worse, maybe everything has already happened, and you're just waking up to the illusion that anything is new. The reversible present illusion. You're reading this now. But what does now really mean? The reversible present illusion proposes something unsettling, that the present moment might not be locked. It might be fluid, reversible, even replayable. And your mind only thinks it's moving forward because that's how it's interpreting the data. What if the present isn't a forward arrow, but a frame that can be moved back and forth, like scrubbing through a video clip? Maybe your consciousness is flicking between possible now frames, trying to find the one that feels the most correct. It explains why some memories feel so fresh, like they're still happening, why some dreams bleed into waking life, why time seems to stretch in fear or collapse in joy. The illusion is that the present is fixed. But what if it's just the frame you're looking at, and your awareness can be tricked into believing any frame is now? And if that's true, then how do you know you're not living inside a rewind or a loop that's already played and you're just watching it again? The locationless consciousness trap. Where is your mind? Point to it. Try, you'll likely point to your head, behind your eyes where it feels like your thoughts live. But the locationless consciousness trap asks, what if consciousness doesn't have a location at all? You see things over there, but where is the you that's seeing? Inside your skull? Floating behind your eyes? Embedded in the brain? Neurologically, there's no clear center. Brain functions are distributed. And even if you map activity, none of it explains where the experience is happening. Now take that further. What if consciousness is non-local? Not in the brain, not in the body, just nowhere. Or everywhere. Like a screen with no projector. Or a dream with no dreamer. This trap breaks your sense of groundedness. You think you're inside something. A head, a person, a place. But awareness might be a field, a phenomenon without anchor. So when you say, I am here, what if that's just the brain's narrative? And the real you is nowhere at all. The choice generator without free will. You feel like you're making choices, but what if you're just watching them happen? The choice generator without free will. Paradox suggests that decisions don't arise from a self that controls, but from a system that generates. Think of your brain like a slot machine. It takes in your genetics, your past, your mood, your current environment, spins the wheels, and out comes a choice. Your conscious mind doesn't decide. It witnesses the outputs and claims it. I decided to go. But really that decision appeared, fully formed, and you accepted it as yours. Now imagine watching that happen in real time. You hesitate. You weigh your options. But under the hood, the decision was already forming, being generated before you even finish thinking. That's not freedom, that's automation dressed up in self-narrative. So if you're not choosing, just experiencing the illusion of choice, then who are you? A ghost in the machine? Or just the machine pretending to be a ghost? The thought that isn't yours. You're sitting still, maybe doing nothing at all. And suddenly a strange thought pops into your head. It's dark, it's random, it feels foreign. You didn't summon it. So where did it come from? This is the thought that isn't yours. A chilling paradox that questions whether all your thoughts are truly yours, or whether some are simply passing through, uninvited. You like to believe you're in control, that your mind is a private space. But the more you observe your thoughts, the more you realize how many just appear. Some feel so unlike you, they scare you. Others feel neutral, disconnected, as if you're hearing someone else's inner voice bleed into your own. Could your brain be like a radio, picking up stray frequencies, fragments of other minds, patterns of thought that float through the collective noise of consciousness? Even neuroscience can't fully explain where spontaneous thoughts originate. Subconscious, environmental priming, random firing. And if one thought isn't yours, how many others aren't either? Are you really the thinker or just a place thoughts land? The perception echo problem. You hear a sound, see a flash of light, feel a sudden emotion. But what if what you just experienced already happened? The perception echo problem suggests that what you perceive in real time may actually be slightly delayed, that your brain is constantly buffering reality, and by the time you notice something, it's already part of the past. Studies show that the brain processes sensory input with delays. Visual information lags behind audio, touch is slower still. Yet your mind stitches it together so seamlessly, you believe you're experiencing it now. But you're not. You're living in a carefully arranged echo of the moment, like hearing your own voice bounce off a distant wall and mistaking it for something current. This becomes a paradox when you ask, if everything you perceive has already happened, then when are you actually living? Always slightly behind, then who is now for? And if you're just watching echoes, who or what is actually in the moment? The uncreated experience loop. What if the experiences you're having, your joys, fears, thoughts, were never consciously created, just endlessly recycled? The uncreated experience loop proposes that most of what you feel and think has no true origin. You didn't choose to feel sad. You didn't invent the image in your dream. It just appeared, over and over, on repeat. Like a track on shuffle, you encounter the same emotional melodies, but convince yourself each one is new, personal, unique. But what if nothing you feel is new? What if your mind is just looping through a finite set of experience templates, giving you the illusion of freshness by changing the context? Joy in childhood, joy in romance, joy in success, same emotion, different costume. You think you're evolving. But maybe you're just rerunning the same script with slightly different lighting. And if none of your experiences are new, then what does that say about you? A self on repeat? Or just a loop pretending to grow? The unwitnessed life dilemma. If something happens and no one is there to see it, did it really happen? Now twist it. If a person lives a full life and no one ever truly witnesses them, were they ever really alive? The unwitnessed life dilemma explores the deep, haunting need for acknowledgement. We laugh harder when someone else is watching. We cry for help when we're alone. We crave being seen, not just by others, but by reality itself. But what if you go your entire life and no one truly sees you? Not your pain, not your dreams, not your essence. You live, you work, you fade. No deep connection, no lasting echo. Did you really exist? And what if the same is true internally? If you never deeply witnessed yourself, if you rush through your moments, never fully present, always distracted, then maybe your life wasn't unlived. It was simply unseen. And maybe being alive isn't just about breathing, but about being truly witnessed even once. The memory without source paradox. You remember something vividly, a smell, a voice, a moment, but no item. But there's no context, no beginning, no explanation. The memory without source paradox confronts those strange memories that seem to float in your mind like orphaned islands. They don't connect to your timeline. You know they happened, but you don't know where or when. Even weirder, some of these memories feel more real than the ones you can verify. So where did they come from? Maybe a dream? A story someone else told? A life that wasn't yours? Or maybe, just maybe, they aren't memories at all, but fragments of other selves, other timelines, even other consciousnesses leaking into your stream. The paradox deepens when you realize that every memory you have is just a reconstruction. It's not stored like a file. It's rebuilt each time you recall it. And if it's built, who's to say you didn't build it from nothing? If your most vivid memories have no source, are they real? And if your mind can fake a memory without you knowing, how many of your memories aren't yours? The self-watcher illusion. You think you're watching yourself, observing your thoughts, analysing your behaviour, judging your emotions. But who exactly is doing the watching? The self-watcher illusion suggests that the you who watches yourself is not a higher self or true self, but just another layer of thought. A thought watching a thought, a trick of recursion. When you say I'm aware of my feelings, you're actually experiencing a thought about feelings, then a thought about that thought. The illusion is that one of these layers is more real, more you, but every time you try to pin it down, it shifts. Another observer appears. It's like holding a mirror up to a mirror and chasing the reflection that looks back at you. The closer you get, the further the real you retreats into the next reflection. This endless recursion creates a powerful illusion of a stable, centered identity, one who watches from above. But strip away each thought, and there's no watcher underneath, just thoughts watching thoughts. So is there a you at all, or just the belief that someone is watching? The zero origin mind loop. Where did your thoughts begin? Your identity? Your first awareness? The zero origin mind loop exposes a terrifying mystery. Your conscious experience seems to have no starting point. You woke up into it, but you don't know when, or how, or why. You assume you were born, that you developed over time, but your actual experience of being didn't begin at birth. You don't remember the origin. You're just here, in the middle of a loop already spinning. Every explanation of your mind's origin, evolution, biology, childhood, comes from within the loop, but none of them escape it. None can step outside and show you the actual moment awareness turned on. So the paradox is this: your mind explains itself from inside itself, a loop, pointing to itself as evidence that it exists. That would be like a dream explaining its own beginning, while still dreaming. So maybe your mind didn't start at all. Maybe it's just appearing forever. The collapsing reality spiral. Sometimes it feels like reality is getting weirder. Time feels distorted. Memory gets hazier. The world feels thinner, less stable. You question if things are actually as solid as they once were. The collapsing reality spiral is the idea that reality might be folding in on itself, not physically but perceptually. That your mind is slowly detaching from the shared consensus of what's real and spiraling into a more isolated, fragmented version of experience. It starts with small things, forgetting why you walked into a room. Then bigger ones. Events from the past suddenly feel like dreams. Conversations feel scripted. Emotions don't match the moment. The world loses depth, meaning, weight. You're still here, but something is slipping. Maybe it's just mental exhaustion, or maybe your consciousness is no longer synced with the external simulation. And here's the paradox. The more you question the collapse, the faster it seems to accelerate. Like awareness itself is undoing the very world it once built to feel safe. And once the spiral starts, how do you know when it ends, or if it already did? The continuity mismatch error. You feel like the same person from yesterday, from last week, from 5 years ago. But are you? The continuity mismatch error points out that your memories, thoughts, and sense of self don't match up across time. They shift, they contradict, they betray each other. What you once believed you now reject. What once made you happy now feels empty. You tell a story about who you are, but that story is constantly being rewritten by new information. So here's the issue. If your identity is based on memory, and memory changes, then who exactly are you maintaining continuity for? Is it really you that's changing? Or is each version of you a different self, masquerading as the same one? You're not the person who cried 5 years ago, not the one who fell in love at 17, not the one who made that mistake last month. You remember being them, but memory doesn't equal identity. Memory is a recording, not a presence. So the continuity you believe in is just a placeholder, a way to stay sane. But if every moment births a slightly different self, then maybe you died 1,000 times already, and you just don't know it. The experience without substance. Close your eyes, feel sadness or joy or fear. Now ask, where is it happening? The experience without substance paradox reveals that while your inner world feels vivid, full of colour, sound, feeling, it has no material form. Thoughts have no texture. Emotions have no weight. Imagination has no volume. Yet they shape your life more than anything physical ever has. You've cried from thoughts, been paralysed by fear that doesn't exist in the room, fallen in love with people who live only in your mind. These experiences feel realer than real, but they are, in every way, intangible. So what are they? Where do they exist? This is the paradox. The most powerful parts of being human don't exist anywhere. They're not inside you, not outside you. They're nowhere. And yet they drive everything. If something can affect your entire life without ever existing as substance, then maybe reality isn't about substance at all. Maybe reality is just experience. And experience doesn't need to be real to feel real. The what if this is still the same moment problem. You think time is moving forward, that each second is new, that the present keeps replacing itself. But the what if this is still the same moment problem asks, what if it never changed at all? What if your entire life, everything you've ever thought, done, or remembered, is happening inside a single, unchanging moment, endlessly re-experienced through shifting awareness? Maybe time is just a mental animation. You're not moving through time. Your consciousness is just scanning over different slices of the same moment, like light flickering across a still painting, giving the illusion of movement. But in reality, nothing has changed. This would explain why the present is always all there is, why the past feels fuzzy and the future uncertain. It's not that they're behind or ahead. They might not exist at all. This could still be the first moment, and you've never left it. The objectless memory trap. Try to remember your favourite object from childhood. A toy, a book, a place. Now ask yourself, what are you actually remembering? Because here's the twist. In most cases, you're not remembering the object itself. You're remembering how you felt about it, its weight, the emotion it triggered, the context. But the object? It's barely there. The object-less memory trap reveals that memory isn't about reality. It's about your relationship to it. The object might not even have existed the way you recall it. You remember the meaning, not the thing. This becomes a trap when you build your identity around these memories. You think you're shaped by the things you loved, lost, touched. But what if you were shaped only by your feelings about things that no longer, or maybe never existed? So your sense of self is built on objects that were never part of your memory, just echoes of emotional placeholders. And if that's true, what's real about your past at all? The inner infinity trap. Close your eyes. Think of space. Now think of space inside you, your mind, your awareness. It has no edges, no walls. You can think forever, imagine forever, question forever. That's the inner infinity trap. The realization that your consciousness contains unlimited depth, but no matter how deep you go, there's always more, and you can never find the bottom. You think you've had your deepest thought? Wait 5 more minutes. You think you've understood your emotions? They shift the moment you look too closely. Every idea leads to another. Every conclusion births new questions. Every mental path opens into a web of possible thoughts, and there's no exit. It's like standing between mirrors, seeing yourself stretch out forever. Except it's not your body, it's your mind. The trap is this: the deeper you go in search of truth, clarity, or peace, the more infinity expands inside you. You don't hit answers, you just hit more corridors. And if there's no end to you, are you ever truly whole, or just endlessly unraveling? The observer-less reality puzzle. You believe reality needs an observer, someone to witness it, measure it, confirm it. But what if that's not true? What if reality exists completely, even when no one is looking, and always has? The observer-less reality puzzle flips the script on solipsism. Instead of assuming you create the world by perceiving it, it suggests the opposite. The world doesn't need you at all. You are a side effect of it, not the center. This idea becomes paradoxical when you realize everything you know about reality comes through observation. But you can't prove what happens when you stop observing. And yet, it likely continues. Mountains don't vanish when you blink. Stars don't pause in the sky. Your absence changes nothing. So why do you still feel like the observer matters? Maybe your consciousness is just a blip, a momentary ripple in a massive sea of ongoing existence that never needed a witness in the first place. And if reality doesn't need an observer, then maybe you are the illusion, the trapped perspective illusion. You've never seen your own face directly, never heard your voice the way others hear it, never truly known how others experience you. That's the trapped perspective illusion. The unsettling realization that you are forever locked inside your own lens. You think you understand yourself, but your view is warped, biased, and unavoidably limited. You'll never know what it's like to experience you from the outside. You can guess, you can observe reactions, but there's always a wall, a filter, a barrier that locks you inside your own angle of perception. And here's the paradox: the you that everyone else sees, the one that exists in memory, photos, relationships, is more real to the world than the you think you are. So who are you really? The version you know, or the one you'll never meet? The phantom self-awakening. You feel like you've woken up many times in life. After a breakup, a near-death experience, a spiritual insight, you say, now I see things clearly. But who is the you that sees? The phantom self. Awakening is the paradox that every time you believe you've awakened to a deeper truth, it's just another layer of illusion, a more refined version of the same dream. You say, that wasn't the real me back then. But at the time, it felt like the real you, and the self that's saying it now, it too will be replaced, and mocked, and remembered as naive by the next one. It's a snake shedding skin, but never becoming anything else. The paradox is that you never truly wake up. You just rebrand, exchanging one mask for another, one belief system for a more convincing story. It feels like growth, but it might just be the mind moving from one delusion to a more sophisticated version. So if the self that awakens is just another phantom, who or what is dreaming all of you? The simulated loop. You've heard the simulation theory. What if reality is just a sophisticated virtual environment? But the simulated loop takes it further. What if you're a simulation inside a simulation? Inside another? And what if each layer believes it's the top? In this model, your entire existence could be a recursive program, running an identity based on another simulated self's memory, all nested within higher-level simulations, none of them real, each believing it is. It's like Russian dolls of consciousness with no final doll. Even worse, what if your simulation has created its own simulations? You dream, you imagine, you build virtual realities in your head. What if those imagined versions of yourself are conscious? And wondering if they are real, the loop is infinite, simulations within simulations, realities born from realities, no base layer, no origin, just the illusion of one, always simulated. So the question isn't, are we in a simulation? The question is, has anyone ever not been? The decision that rewrites the past. You make a decision today to leave a job, forgive someone, or change your life. Afterward, your entire understanding of your past shifts. Suddenly, the breakup wasn't a mistake. It was necessary. The betrayal was a turning point. The pain had meaning. That's the decision that rewrites the past. A paradox where your present choice alters the emotional truth of your memories. You don't just reinterpret your past, you rewrite the story of who you were to justify who you've become. But here's the twist. If the meaning of your past depends on your current choice, then what was the real past? Was it pain? Growth? Was it both, depending on who you became later? Now imagine this happens constantly. You're reshaping your past every time you change. So what is memory then? A record? Or a script being re-edited with every plot twist? The memory of another self problem. You remember falling in love, feeling heartbreak, making mistakes, growing. But what if those memories didn't happen to you? The memory of another self problem is the idea that the version of you who lived those moments is not the one remembering them. That self is gone, dead, replaced. What remains are the memories, inherited by the current self. It's like picking up a stranger's journal and slowly believing the stories are yours. The continuity feels real, but emotionally, experientially, you're not the same person who lived them. Maybe the you who felt those things no longer exists. And maybe you're just the caretaker of their memories, keeping them alive through repetition, like reading a role in a play you didn't write. But if your identity is made of memories from selves that no longer exist, then who are you now? Just a collector? Or a stranger in your own skin? The reverse ontology puzzle. Most of us assume that being comes first. That existence gives rise to thought. You are, therefore you think. But the reverse ontology puzzle challenges that. What if it's reversed? What if thinking, awareness itself, creates the illusion of being? In this view, you don't exist before your thoughts. You exist because of them. The moment thought stops, in deep sleep, blackout, death, you vanish. There's no entity lingering silently, no watcher waiting, just non-being. So your identity isn't a foundation. It's an effect of thought continuing itself, a side effect of the loop that says, I am. Now consider this. If the sense of self is built after thought, not before it, then there was never a stable self to begin with, just the sensation of one, created on the fly. Being doesn't generate thought. Thought pretends to be being. And once that illusion fades, so do you. The recursive awakening problem. You've had moments of awakening, sudden clarity, realizations, mental shifts. You felt like you finally saw the truth. But then, a year later, you awaken again, to a new truth, a deeper one, and again, and again. The recursive awakening problem is the disturbing realization that no awakening's final. Each truth you arrive at only sets the stage for the next one to dismantle it. You feel like you're peeling back layers of illusion. But what if there's no core? Just infinite layers. Each awakening's just another shift in perspective, another story that feels more right than the last, until it's not. You never wake up, you just move from dream to dream. This recursive loop traps spiritual seekers, thinkers, and overanalyzers alike. The deeper you go, the more truth seems to shift, as if awareness itself keeps resetting the map once you think you've figured it out. So, if there's always another awakening, waiting, have you ever really been awake, or are you just dreaming of waking up? the illusion of prior lives paradox. Some people feel they've lived before, not metaphorically, literally. Vivid flashes, unexplainable familiarity, emotions that feel inherited. The illusion of prior lives paradox suggests these experiences may not point to actual past lives, but rather a failure in the structure of consciousness itself. Your mind craves continuity. It wants a backstory. So it creates one, a phantom past to explain deep emotional residues, identity confusion, or inexplicable knowledge. These may not be memories from another life, but displaced fragments from your own subconscious, reassembled into something that feels ancient. Alternatively, what you remember as a past life might be someone else's, absorbed through storytelling, dream, or even emotional resonance. The paradox lies in this. Your mind needs to believe in a personal history, even if it has to invent one. So are you remembering a past life? Or just covering up the uncomfortable truth that there was no life before this, and you simply emerged, alone, with no narrative at all? The perspective grid collapse. You organise your world around perspectives, yours, theirs, society's, God's. Your lens is how you make sense of meaning. But the perspective grid collapse asks, what happens when you step outside every perspective at once? Try it. Abandon your own bias. Don't adopt anyone else's. Just float, perspective free. No self, no narrative, no emotional framing. What's left? Nothing. You realise that everything, love, pain, identity, ethics, depends on having a point of view. Without one, the world isn't colourful, sad, or meaningful. It's just data. So the paradox is this: to make sense of the world, you need a perspective. But every perspective limits you, traps you, makes the infinite seem personal. Collapse the grid, and everything disappears. You become free, and yet you also become no one, the unaccounted for experience. There are moments that haunt you, flashes of feeling, surreal imagery, emotions that don't belong to anything. They show up in dreams, during trauma, in silence. They leave marks but no trail. The unaccounted for experience is the paradox that not all your experiences fit into your life. Some don't make sense. They don't belong to your timeline. They don't connect to any memory. Yet they feel deeply real. Where do they come from? Some say they're buried memories. Others say they're ancestral trauma, or signals from parallel lives. But maybe they're none of those. Maybe they're just the overflow. Scraps of experience without a container. Raw consciousness. Leaking. You can't explain them. You can't share them. And when you try, they disappear. But they shape you. Quietly. And if not all of your experiences are yours, then what are you made of? The meaning constructor loop. You search for meaning. In love, in loss, in work, in silence. But what if meaning is not something you find, but something you unconsciously build and then forget you made? The meaning constructor loop reveals that your mind is a meaning-making machine. You assign purpose to pain, value to success, significance to events, and then convince yourself that those meanings were always there. You get rejected and say, it made me stronger. You suffer and say, there was a reason. But maybe that's not truth, just your brain trying to survive the chaos. This loop gives you stability, but it also traps you, because once you assign meaning to something, you stop questioning it. You turn pain into destiny. You turn randomness into prophecy, and you never look back. The paradox is that meaning brings peace, but it's also self-deception. And if everything meaningful was constructed, then is anything in your life truly true, or just emotionally useful? The duplicated self-trap. You wake up, you think, you feel, and you assume you're the only version of you doing this right now. But what if you're not? The duplicated self-trap is the idea that your consciousness may have been duplicated, not metaphorically, but literally. Maybe by a multiverse split, maybe by a simulation reboot, or maybe by some unknown cognitive process that allows two or more identical selves to arise independently, each thinking they're the real one. Now here's the trap. If a duplicate of you is created, with the same memories, emotions, and awareness, how would you know which one you are? More disturbingly, does it matter? If every version of you feels authentic, then authenticity becomes meaningless. Your identity isn't unique. It's just one version among many, all equally convinced of their centrality. Imagine being duplicated right now, atom for atom, thought for thought. You continue reading this sentence. So does your copy. You both believe you're the original. But from that moment on, your experiences begin to diverge. One walks away, one refreshes the page. Two yous with two futures. But only one gets to call themselves you. Now expand it. What if this duplication has happened countless times already? Across timelines, simulations, or even within your own dreaming mind. Each you, a branch, a shadow, a failed or alternate path. The duplicated self-trap isn't just about replication. It's about the illusion of central identity. That there's one solid thread tying your life together. But if you can be copied, reloaded, or rebooted without knowing, then your consciousness might not be the pilot. It might be the passenger, riding in whichever vessel it wakes up in. And if that's true, then maybe you haven't been the same you all along, just one of many, rotating through the illusion of continuity, the external observer blackout. You live your life from the inside, seeing through your eyes, hearing through your ears, feeling your own thoughts. But what if someone, or something, is watching you, from the outside? And what if that external observer occasionally blinks out, causing your reality to subtly shift? The external observer. Blackout is a paradoxical idea, that your reality is only stable while it's being observed from outside yourself. When that external awareness fades, for a split second, a glitch, a cosmic blink. Your world doesn't pause. It destabilizes, things feel off. Details change. You feel disconnected, like you're running on autopilot. Then it clicks back into place. But not exactly where it left off. This would explain why certain moments feel less real than others. Why you suddenly forget what you were doing. Why entire conversations feel like they never happened. Or like you weren't fully in them. These aren't just lapses in attention. They're blackouts. Moments when the external observer turns away and you're left in a kind of metaphysical freefall. You might be the internal player. But who's the one watching? Some call it God. Others call it higher self, simulation monitor, or universal consciousness. Regardless of the label, the idea is simple. Your subjective awareness might not be the whole show. You could be part of a larger stream of consciousness. And when that stream disconnects, your reality feed starts to flicker. Now ask yourself, have you ever felt like you were offline, even while awake? That your day unfolded, but you weren't really there? The external observer blackout suggests those moments aren't you zoning out. They're evidence that awareness itself is layered, and the deeper layer, the one you can't access, sometimes steps away. And when it does, you're not fully you anymore, just a shell continuing to move, waiting for the gaze to return, the accidental first-person illusion. You believe you're the center of experience, that you are the one seeing, feeling, deciding. But what if that first-person viewpoint is a glitch? The accidental first-person illusion argues that consciousness isn't meant to feel personal. It's not yours. It's just happening. Awareness arising in some structure, somewhere by accident. And you're just the one caught in the middle of it. You feel like a subject, the experiencer. But that might be an illusion created by language, memory, and neurological bias. There may be no true I, just a story told to hold the scattered pieces together. You didn't choose to be here. You didn't assemble this identity. You just woke up into it, mid-narrative, and assumed, this must be me. But what if awareness can attach to any frame, any life, any body, and yours just happened to catch it? Think about dreams. You often find yourself in one, with no context, no memory of arrival, but you accept it. I'm here, this is me. Maybe waking life is the same. A longer, more convincing illusion. The scary part. If your perspective is just a side effect of an accidental mental loop, then your identity is no more real than the characters you dream at night. There's no deep soul, no spiritual GPS. Just first-person perspective assigned randomly, and your mind mistaking it for proof of self. So you say, I am me. But maybe that I is just a placeholder, a byproduct of a system that needed someone, anyone, to say it. The misplaced awareness problem. Where are you exactly? You point to your head, maybe your chest, but the truth is you've never seen yourself directly. You've only ever seen the world, never the you that's doing the seeing. The misplaced awareness problem challenges the basic assumption that awareness is inside you. What if it's not? What if awareness isn't located in the body at all? And the sense that it is a trick of perception. Your entire sense of being is based on perspective. You look out from behind your eyes, so you assume awareness is located there. But you've never truly confirmed that. You've never stepped outside awareness to inspect it. Now flip the idea. What if awareness is not internal but non-local? What if it doesn't belong to you, but you belong to it? You're not the container of consciousness, just a node it flows through. This explains those strange moments where you feel disconnected from your body. When time warps, when you feel like you're watching your life instead of living it. These aren't mental breakdowns, they're cracks in the illusion of location. Your mind tries to re-anchor you. I'm here. But it doesn't know where here is. It's guessing. So what happens if awareness is misplaced, assigned to a body that isn't really its home? Then your entire sense of self may be built on a miscalculation, a cosmic typo. And the you think you are might not be where you think it is. The experience-only universe. Strip everything away. Space, time, particles, laws. What's left? Experience. The experience-only universe is the radical idea that the entire cosmos isn't made of matter or energy, but of experiencing. Not things, not objects, just awareness encountering itself endlessly. You don't live in a world of solid forms. You live in a world of perceived sensations. You don't touch an object. You experience the feeling of touching. You don't see colour. You experience the effects of light interpreted by your brain. So if every part of reality is mediated through experience, what if that's all reality is? No atoms, no matter, just the illusion of structure, generated by endless feedback loops of perception. The external world is just an agreed-upon experience, like a multiplayer dream. Here's the paradox. If reality only exists through experience, then unexperienced reality might not exist at all. It's not just unseen, it's non-existent, until someone observes it. So maybe the universe doesn't contain experience. Maybe the universe is experience. And if that's true, then you're not in the universe observing it. You are the universe observing itself. The no external verifier paradox. You believe in objectivity, that there's a reality out there everyone can agree on. But the no external verifier paradox asks, who's actually verifying your version of reality? Everything you see, hear, and feel is filtered through you. There's no truly external reference point. You trust your senses, but they can be tricked. You trust your memory, but it's fragile. You trust others, but you experience them through your own perceptions. At no point do you step outside yourself to confirm, is this all really happening? This isn't just a philosophical thought. It's a deep structural flaw in human experience. Even when we build scientific instruments, they still require a conscious observer to interpret the data. Even your belief in objectivity is subjective. So here's the twist. If your entire worldview is built on unverifiable experience, then truth becomes relative by default. Even your most trusted memories or beliefs may just be unchallenged hallucinations that feel stable. It gets worse. Even if an external verifier did exist, a god, a machine, a perfect being, you'd still need to perceive it, which means you'd still be trapped in your own filter. So the paradox is this: you can't escape subjectivity. You can only imagine that you've escaped it. But that too is another thought inside the bubble. There is no test you can take, no perspective you can borrow, no reality check strong enough to let you truly know what's out there. Because you are always in here, the looping decision tree. You make choices every day, big ones, small ones. But what if each decision doesn't lead to a straight line, but loops back to the same root problem, again and again? The looping decision tree is the idea that no matter what path you take, you eventually confront the same existential forks. Isolation, meaning, fear, desire. Different situations, same fundamental dilemmas, disguised under new names. You break up with someone, only to fall into the same pattern with someone else. You quit a job, and end up replicating the same stress in a new role. You change your habits, but not the reason they exist. Every choice appears to take you forward, but if you zoom out, the paths are curved. You're walking a maze, not a journey. Here's the loop. Each decision you make strengthens your identity. That identity limits your perception. Your perception filters your options, and your options lead back to decisions that reinforce your identity. It's self-sustaining, a decision tree that loops rather than branches. And if that's true, then maybe freedom isn't found in new decisions, but in escaping the decision-making structure altogether. The everything is just now paradox. You live your life in a timeline, past behind you, future ahead. But what if there's no timeline at all? The everything is just now paradox suggests that time is an illusion, a psychological trick your brain uses to organize experience. In truth, there is no past, no future, just an endless now. When you remember the past, you're doing it now. When you imagine the future, that imagining happens now. You never actually experience any other time, just thoughts that pretend to be about other times. Even motion is deceptive. You believe your body moves through time, but all motion is perception within the current moment. Everything else is memory. So what if the past never existed? What if the future will never come? What if your entire life, your history, your hopes, is just texture layered onto the present to make it feel meaningful? This paradox is unsettling because it means nothing ever really happens. Everything is always happening. And the you from 5 years ago, just a shadow being generated right now as a narrative device. The mind hates this. It wants control. It wants history. It wants progress. But if all of time is now, then your entire identity might just be an ongoing hallucination, the misaligned self-timeline. You think of your life as a straight thread, a single self evolving through time. But what if your emotional, psychological, and physical selves are on different timelines, barely syncing? The misaligned self-timeline theory says your body might be here in 2025, but your emotions are still stuck in 2018. Your beliefs come from 2005, and the you present to others hasn't caught up to either one. This explains why you sometimes feel like a stranger in your own life, like you're living someone else's timeline, or why you overreact to situations based on emotions that don't match the moment. You're not broken, you're just out of sync. Each self, emotional, mental, social, spiritual, evolves at its own pace. One part of you might have healed from trauma. Another part still screams like it happened yesterday. One self believes in growth. Another is stuck in survival mode. This misalignment can be subtle or extreme. It can cause anxiety, disorientation, self-sabotage. Because when your selves don't match, it's hard to know who you are. The paradox? You expect yourself to be a singular being, but you might just be multiple timelines, living simultaneously inside one body. The emergent thought feedback. You think your thoughts come from you, that you generate them. But what if they're actually generated by themselves, and you're just the space they happen in? The emergent thought feedback is the strange idea that thoughts don't come from a thinker. They emerge from other thoughts, bouncing, building, reacting to one another, like fire feeding on itself. A thought triggers another. That one spirals. Another one reacts. Before long, you're lost in a cascade of emotion or narrative. And you didn't choose any of it. There was no you standing at the gate, authoring these thoughts, just a system reacting to itself. Your mind, then, is less like a narrator and more like a hall of mirrors. Ideas reflecting off ideas, creating loops, illusions, and identities that feel personal, but aren't. You say, I'm anxious. But maybe the anxiety started as a tiny thought, reacting to another and another until a full self was formed to make sense of the feedback. The paradox: if thoughts arise from other thoughts, where did the first one come from? Maybe nowhere. Maybe the mind doesn't begin thinking. Maybe it just is thought, echoing into itself forever. The self as simulation shock. You think you're real. Flesh, thoughts, memory, experience. But what if you're not? What if you're just a simulation of a person, created for reasons you'll never know? The self as simulation shock proposes that your consciousness, the you reading this, is not a product of biology or divine essence, but a self-contained simulation running within a larger system. Not metaphorically, literally. You are code. Here's the kicker. You don't need a supercomputer to simulate your entire world, just your perceptions. The world you see doesn't need to exist beyond your awareness, just your inputs. Your memory could be fabricated, your emotions pre-programmed, the people you love, elaborate placeholders. And because the simulation includes your logic and beliefs, you're programmed to resist this idea with rational arguments that are part of the code. It's not solipsism, it's not ego, it's the chilling possibility that your reality exists only as long as the simulation runs. And you are just a character inside it, assigned the illusion of identity. And what if you weren't even the original simulation? What if you're a copy, a runtime model rebooted after thousands of failed trials? Every time your simulated mind breaks, they start you again. New thoughts, new memories, same result. You feel unique, alive. But maybe every you thought the same, and they were all simulations too. The reality as deferred rendering paradox. You believe the world exists continuously, whether you're looking or not. But the deferred rendering paradox challenges this deeply held assumption. What if reality is only rendered when you pay attention to it? Like in video games where distant details aren't generated until the player turns toward them. Your brain is an energy-saving machine. It doesn't process the entire environment. It fakes 90% of your reality based on shortcuts and predictions. Now imagine that consciousness itself does the same. You don't see the world as it is. You see the version your mind renders in real time. And everything you don't focus on? It's not blurry, it's not vague. It simply doesn't exist until you look. So what happens when you leave a room? You think the furniture's still there, but maybe that's just your mind catching an old image. When you walk back in, you're not re-entering a room. You're seeing a fresh render based on prior assumptions. And if something changes unexpectedly, you experience a glitch, surprise, fear, confusion. The rendering engine faltering for a second. Now extrapolate. If the entire world is deferred rendering, then no unseen world exists at all. You're not in a world. The world is in you. The consciousness cascade trap. You wake up, you think, I am me. That thought confirms your existence. But here's the paradox. What if that feeling of being you is just a cascade of processes, none of which are actually aware? The consciousness cascade trap proposes that your sense of self is the byproduct of unconscious sub-processes triggering each other, like dominoes falling or code calling code. There is no you sitting at the top, just a chain reaction of awareness mimicking patterns. Your thoughts, echoes, your decisions, algorithmic, your identity. A polished illusion built from a million unconscious reactions stitched into one coherent narrative. You aren't observing your life. You are the cascade. The moment you say, I think, the thought is already past. By the time you notice an emotion, it's been processed and stored. Your reactions are retroactive. The illusion of control applied after the fact, like a puppet watching its own strings move. So what happens if you trace the chain backward? You find nothing. There is no thinker behind the thought, no final observer behind the mirror. Just recursive processes. Complex, beautiful, empty. You were never the one driving, just the illusion of hands on the wheel. The impossible observer swap. Imagine waking up and realizing you're now experiencing life from someone else's body, with all of their memories, thoughts, relationships, as if you've always been them. The impossible observer. Swap asks, what would prevent this from happening? What locks your awareness to your life? We assume continuity is natural, that you belong to your body. But that's just a story. If awareness is non-physical, then why couldn't it jump from your stream of experience to someone else's? You'd never know it happened. Your memories would match your new body. Your feelings would feel normal. The switch would go unnoticed because everything you'd need to feel like you would already be in place. And so here's the question. How do you know you haven't already swapped? The paradox is that there's no internal test for identity. You don't carry a unique signature of self. You are whoever you remember being. And memory is manipulable. So maybe you were someone else yesterday, or maybe you're someone else now, and the you that worries about it doesn't exist. Just the latest user logged into a body with no password protection. The final awakening illusion. You've read the books, had the breakdowns, found clarity. You say, this is it. I've finally awakened. But the final awakening illusion reveals the harshest truth of all. There is no final awakening. Every realization you have is just a new mental structure. And every structure eventually becomes another cage. You escape one identity only to build another. You see through one illusion only to cling to a deeper one. You think you've arrived, but all you've done is shift the boundaries of what you call truth. The mind wants a destination. It wants a peak moment. I've figured it out. But that moment always dissolves. It always becomes a new belief, a new lens, a new framework. And soon you outgrow it too. Enlightenment, awakening, freedom. They're just more walls, prettier, quieter, more convincing. But walls all the same. So the real awakening might be this, realizing that every awakening is just another scene in the play. There is no end, no final you, no true self hiding underneath the masks. Just a dream dreaming of waking up, over and over, forever.